Welcome back to Cult Pop. I'm your host, Jim Hall, and we've got two great authors on the show today. We're going to start off with Sarah Langan, an excellent horror author and a recent winner of the Bram Stoker Award for Best Novel in Horror. The woman's absolutely amazing, and she's written two novels that are just incredibly scary, and I think you're going to want to learn more about her and check her out. Later on in the show, we're going to have Brad Meltzer back on, and Brad's going to be discussing some of the work that he's just been nominated for the Eisner Award, his work on the Justice League of America, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about the comic industry. But first off, we're with Sarah Langan, author of The Keeper and the Missing, two incredible horror novels, as I said. Sarah, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled.
Well, we're thrilled to have you on, Sarah. We talked off camera here about how I was fortunate enough to learn about the Bram Stoker Awards. I learned about you through simply visiting their website and then seeing that you'd actually won for Best New Novel 2007. And I tracked you down because I thought, how do I not know about this woman? You've written two incredibly scary novels. The first one, The Keeper, and then The Missing, which you actually won the award for. Why don't you tell us a little bit about The Keeper first, which is about Bedford, Maine, and the horrors that all the families in that town have to deal with, but especially one family and a couple of daughters from the family. So tell us a little bit about the novel, The Keeper.
Well, The Keeper is set in a paper mill town in Maine, and the paper mill has closed. So many of the people have left the town in pursuit of other jobs, and it's sort of the Rust Belt of New England. A handful of families have stayed for various reasons, and the story opens with those people who've stayed who don't have much hope. And one family in particular, the Marley family, they have two daughters, Elizabeth and Susan. And Susan is the town pariah who's been kicked out of her home, is unwelcome anywhere, to earn her living is a prostitute. And the story is mostly about the relationship between Susan and the younger sister. There's a lot of issues of sibling rivalry and guilt. And
Sarah, there's a lot with the two daughters. There's also the hidden secrets of that family that go on, and then the town. The thing that really struck me is, as the whole country is in a little bit of a recession, you could really feel the pains of Bedford and how it's basically a town dying. Their last hope, this paper mill, is pretty much running out of business, and in and of itself, that's kind of a horror of a different type, where these folks are starting to learn that this mill is going to close and what's life going to be without the mill. So I think you did a great job of setting up just a scary situation in real life to begin with, but then the true horror that horror fans love really comes on later on. Can you talk a little bit about the setting of Bedford and maybe where some of the ideas of this town came from?
Well, Bedford in the novel is founded by this paper mill guy in the 1800s, and basically this established family winds up stealing all the money from the town, which typically happens. And I went to college in a town called Waterville, Maine, and there was an economic recession going on at the time that I was there, and a paper mill had recently closed. It just seemed like a hopeless place, and the contrast between that and my college on the top of a hill where everybody wore Patagonia, not even LL Bean, was absurd to me. There's an unfair, and I think a lot of what The Keeper the issues that it deals with are social responsibility and human responsibility. This town pariah, Susan, people, how can they just let her walk around when she's obviously crazy? How can this town just die? There's greater questions of capitalism, but obviously there's horror too, because all that plays into questions of guilt.
Well, Sarah, does your horror, now that I'm reading a lot of horror, somebody asked me, is she a traditional horror writer? A friend of mine asked, because I was recommending your book here after I finished. And I really don't know what to say a traditional horror writer is anymore, considering the success of a Stephen King, to the success of a Clive Barker, to the success of horror authors like a Brian Keene, or some of the splatter authors. What type of horror, if you were to explain yourself to somebody who's never heard from you, and you're selling your book to a fan at home or on the website watching you right now, what type of horror do you write?
Well, I'm really bad at selling myself for stuff, but the kind of horror that I write, when I handed in my novel, The Keeper, I couldn't get anyone to buy it for about 8 years. I couldn't get an agent. Everyone said, horror is dead. You're a nice girl. Go write something about single girls in the city. And that's offensive for many reasons,
sure,
but also just untrue to my natural voice. And I'm reluctant. What I write is definitely horror, but I'm reluctant to say that it's. I think that it winds up getting associated with what people think of as horror, and the notions that people have about what horror is, and those notions tend to be wrong, I think. There's so much stuff that's coming out right now in the horror genre that is intelligent and female and not about the prurient interests of watching someone get slashed up or phalluses and things like that. So what I do is definitely traditional horror. It's probably less Lovecraft, more Stephen King, more character driven, more about human relationships, and there's so much potential for horror in that, and just the way that families operate and the social constraints of society are so easily represented by horror. And also, we've been at war for 5 years, and can't even talk about it anymore because we just don't even know how to extricate ourselves from this terrible situation. Horror plays a huge and relevant role in that, and I would say in the last 5 years it's starting to come back and people are recognizing it as a valid genre. And I guess I'm very defensive and protective of horror, because whenever I tell people that I write horror, they say, why, you seem like a nice girl, or you should try comedy, or what does that mean? Are you mental? Is there something wrong? And I think, well, you should just read it and figure it out for yourself. And these labels aren't always appropriate. So I don't know how if I'm answering your question. But.
No, you are, because I just find that you're actually exactly answering what I'm wondering, because horror and science fiction were the first things that ever really intrigued me when I started to read as a young person. And what I've loved about the horror and science fiction as two different forms of writing is that it allows you to go certain places that maybe other writing doesn't. But all of the strongest writing in those genres, or any genre, in order to be successful, you have to have very strong characters. In your two novels here, you've pulled off incredible characterization. The characters are just amazing. The protagonists are people that I end up caring about. In the first book, The Keeper, I felt horrible for the homeless girl you're talking about, and the trials and tribulations we find out that she went through in life. So I think you've done a great job doing that. First and foremost, you wrote a great book that has horror elements in it, but I was just curious how you would characterize your writing and what it is, because it is so very good. But I think it's even funny that it's kind of pigeonholed into horror. It's almost a dark fantasy horror, and sometimes I just like to ask writers what they actually, if they even feel pigeonholed, because your story could very easily be described, and there's similar writers that write stuff where they're just considered dark fantasy writers. So that's really kind of what I meant. No,
I think those two books are horror. If you're going to classify them as something, I get protective of horror, and I'm constantly there is a pigeonhole in the expectations of what you're going to write next, and how it all feeds into your work, that I think everyone in genre winds up having to negotiate.
Well, it's funny, you told us a little while ago here, Sarah, that it took you so many years to sell The Keeper, Then obviously you finally got it sold. It had a level of success that was, quite good, and it got a lot of great feedback, most importantly, and a lot of other writers and a lot of fans just saying how much they enjoyed the book, how scary it was, etc. So you follow up with The Missing. It's not quite, it's a standalone novel. It's a great standalone novel, but it deals with Corpus Christi is Bedford's neighbor town. And through a series of events, some of the horror of the town of Bedford is unleashed on Corpus Christi. So after all the work you did to sell the book, tell us a little bit about the book, The Missing. Tell us as much as you'd like to describe. And then the joy you must feel with eventually being nominated and then winning the Bram Stoker Award for the best novel of 2007.
I was thrilled. The Missing is sort of a satire, but also very clearly a straight traditional horror story about suburbia and upper middle class America. And it revolves around a woman who's been dating a guy for 7 or 8 years, and he dumps her for her best friend. And they were engaged. And the corollary is this couple having their midlife crisis, very wealthy. He's a doctor, she's the town librarian, and they can't. They're having a marital crisis, and I want to deal with issues like that, and in the background, this absurd, insane consumption, because the virus that this town gets infected with makes people hungry, and they eat, eventually turning to human flesh. It's not a zombie story, it's more of a mix of several of those traditional monsters into the one that I found most convenient for the story that I was telling. But, Army comes into the town, and there's all kinds of what I thought were topical issues. And also, it was a lot of fun to write. I absolutely loved Maddie. She was one of my favorite characters. She dyes her hair purple and runs around screaming all the time and is madly in love with her boyfriend. It totally reminded me of me in high school. So she was great fun to write. All the characters were. It was just, I loved writing that book.
Well, Sarah, obviously the love has shown, and the results have paid off because you won the Bram Stoker Award, and your competition was amazing, and the competition was amazing, yet your novel's amazing, and it won. So what does this now do for your career, and what are you expecting? I know you're already working on a third novel, and you've already got a lot of other things going on in your life just by reading the dust jacket of the book. You're leading an interesting life right now, but what can we now expect from your career?
Well, I just handed in my third novel to my editor on Friday, and it should be coming out in January or February of 2009. And it's totally different from what I've written before, but I think people will really like it. It's set in Manhattan, and it's about a woman who breaks up with her fiancé, even though she loves him, because she just doesn't think she can do it. She can't live this life that he wants her to live, and winds up moving into a haunted apartment building. And the apartment that she takes, the previous occupant was a woman who murdered all 4 of her children in the bathtub. I took that from that terrible story in Texas several years ago. So that's what's coming out. I think I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And the Stoker was fantastic, and I hope it helps sales and generates more interest. What I really love about it is that I loved The Missing, and the fact that it won the Stoker, I think, means the book will stay in print, and I love that. I love that people will one day look and say, well, what won an award, or what won the HWA award, and we'll buy it, and that makes me so happy.
Yes, and congratulations on that again. I think that's an incredible honor, and it's got to be quite rewarding for you. And every novel you write from now till the end of your life, you'll be able to have that, under your name. You're going to be able to have that title, so that's really quite fantastic. While we have a moment, I'd be remiss if we didn't tell folks about your website, Sarah. We've put it up throughout the show, but why don't you remind folks at home so first-time people learning about you now can go on the website, can learn about the novels, and just learn about you in general. So why don't you tell the folks at home your website?
www.sarahlangan, SarahLangan.com. I have a blog and some interesting links, and people should write to me with the mystery site of the month, and I'm giving away 2 chat books from Cemetery Dance that I'm in, called Phantom. So. Well,
fantastic. That's a great reason for folks to go. I'm always promoting authors' websites, Sarah, because I think it's, not to go too much in on the topic, but 15 years ago when you liked an author, you didn't know anything about the author. He or she was just a person that wrote a book you enjoyed, but you didn't know anything about their life other than what you read about a dust jacket. Now, through websites, we can learn a lot more about the person behind the books, and in most cases, I think that's a very cool thing.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that people can write to me and tell me what they liked and what they didn't like and all kinds of things.
Yes, the feedback is definitely very cool. Well, Sarah, I want to congratulate you again. I think you've done an absolutely spectacular job. The Keeper was just scary as all get out. I love a good horror story, and the Keeper and The Missing are both fantastic. For folks at home, The Missing is what won the award. But buy The Keeper first if you get a chance, because it'll really kind of set you up for what kind of writer Sarah is, and then pick up The Missing, and I think back to back you're just going to absolutely love them, and you're going to realize, like I do, that Sarah is a great new voice in horror writing. So Sarah, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. Whenever I have an author on that I really enjoy, I thank them, because you gave me hours of enjoyment reading your novels, and I thank you for that. And you also gave me a few hours of nightmares, but I'll thank you for that also, because a good horror novel will do that to you. But again, congratulations, and I wish you continued success.
Thank you. I loved being on your show.
Well, thank you. We loved having you, and we look forward to having you on again for your next novel.
Great.
Okay, and folks at home, please go on Sarah's website, learn more about her, track down her books. I really think you're going to enjoy the heck out of them, and I really think she's a great new voice in horror, and you're going to like her. If you'd stay tuned now, when we come back, we're going to speak with Brad Meltzer, interview I had an opportunity to conduct about a year ago, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the comic industry and some of his work he's doing. Today we've got a spectacular show for you. We've got Brad Meltzer. He's one of my all-time favorite guests on the show. He's an all-around great guy, and he's just a fantastic author. You know him from his work on the Justice League of America, his many New York Times best-selling novels. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the promotion you do, and then some things going on with the novel. First, I wanted to say I think it's interesting that unlike a lot of your contemporaries, not only do you have the people who read you because you're a New York Times bestseller, but you're kind of, this show is for geekdom and people that really embrace pop culture and things of that nature. And as a man who wrote the Justice League and made that a bestseller, man that wrote the Green Arrow, and you're doing all kinds of other comic work, you certainly have a certain eye or a certain way of writing characters that people just obviously love. New York Times bestseller, but also the comic side of things. Now, Wizard Magazine, that really helps promote that type of pop culture and comic books and stuff, has just been amazing in promoting your novel. 2 months in a row, you had big fold out. One you had in September, a very nice article about you and very glowing words about your novel. And then in this newest issue, the entire first chapter. So I'm very impressed, and if you wanted to talk a little bit about trying to bring that market in, that maybe some of these comic folks reading and loving your work on Justice League, reading and loving your work, and you just recently did a one-shot for DC. Do you think that there's a significant market there that you'll be pulling in that may love your comic work and now discover, hey, here's a great new New York Times bestseller, and there's 5 other novels out there you can pick up?
The best part of this isn't saying, oh, I got more people to read the books. the best part is realizing that people love good story. Do you go see, when I go see a movie, I don't go see romantic comedies and romantic comedies only. I like to see romantic comedies, well, not really, but I like to see the big action blockbuster, but then I like to see the small art house film.
Sure.
And then I like to see the big dumb blown up movie, and then I want to see some with subtitles, and we're all complex. So it was just amazing to me. I'd have all these comic readers who would say, I've never tried your novels, I'm going to give it a shot. They did it really with Book of Fate, because Book of Fate was in the back of the Justice League, and so they really got to read the first chapter and say, you know what, this is interesting. And what I love when I go to these signings, that there are people who bring comics. They'll bring stacks of comics, Identity Crisis, Green Arrow, runs on Justice League, and then they'll buy a novel and say, I'm going to take a shot. And I love that bravery. I love someone that says, you know what, I gave you a shot here, and let's see if you can do it again. And if it works, great. If not, to me, I don't care what the genre is. I don't care if it's, literary fiction, genre fiction. I don't care if it's comic books, comic strips, coloring books, whatever it is. People think it's a hierarchy, and somehow literary fiction's at the top and somewhere in the bottom is comics. And I just don't believe that. I think in any subgenre, 90% of it is garbage, and 10% of it is gold.
Okay,
gold. And the question is what's the gold?
Right.
And I think, we find the Watchmens of the world, and we find the Dark Knights of the world, and we find those things that we love. And if people will go find a Justice League and then go find the Book of Lies, great. I just love that people are willing to say, you know what, I like more than one thing, and I don't want to just eat, the same flavor my whole life.
I was just really impressed with it, and I think it's neat that you can bring in the two different groups, and hopefully they can find, I like to read a good comic, I like to read a good novel. It's not often you can find somebody that's doing both, although that's becoming something more and more, folks like yourself, David Morrell, and different people writing that stuff, but I think that's very interesting. Another thing you did that's interesting is the soundtrack that you have available, and I think this is a real neat idea. Tell us a little bit about the soundtrack that you're making available for the novel.
Yeah, there's a soundtrack for the Book of Lies, the companion soundtrack from Sony Music and Victor Records. And does a novel need a soundtrack? No. But is it cool to have a soundtrack? Yes, it is cool.
Yes.
Why is it cool? Because we got REM. And why is it cool? Because we got the Greatest American Hero theme. And that's cool. And why is it cool? Because there's a guy who wrote a real song called The Book of Lies. And I don't care if it's the worst song on this planet. It has the word The Book of Lies, and it's about my novel. That's the greatest song of all time to me.
Right.
And it was fun for me to pick it out. The one thing that I'm really proud of is we actually did a whole instrumental section. So you can actually read chapter 1 of the book and listen to the score of the novel. And we went back and forth, and I threw away half their songs. We got another half that came in. But it is as close as I can give you when you hit play on your iPod and you listen to this and you read, as close as I can give you to what I'm hearing in my own head emotionally as I write the book.
Okay.
And especially, cool. I always say, if you do nothing, read the last chapter and play the last chapter on the soundtrack. It's just perfect to me. It's the perfect match of music and what the words are saying on those pages.
I haven't done that with the music yet, but I'm going to. I thought that was a really neat idea, actually, and I think that's it's kind of like having a director's cut to a DVD. Read the novel and then go through again and do it with your music.
It's not anything more than some Barnum stunt. But I also think, why not try it? No one's ever done it before. Let's try, and that's the best thing to do, is to try what hasn't been done.
Okay, now Brad, I've always known you as a great guy and a caring person, and you're showing that again with the foundation you've created to help Jerry Siegel and a house that's really not been cared for that should be. And Superman's creator. Tell us about how you're trying to save this house.
Sure. When I was researching the Book of Lies, I went to Cleveland. I got to see where was Superman actually created. Where's the house where this young 17-year-old sat up in bed and said, I have an idea. And I figured it would be, right out of a Norman Rockwell painting, and there'd be apple pie waiting for me on the front porch. The house where Google was founded is protected. But the house where Superman was created is a mess. And I don't just mean it needs a little bit of paint. I mean that it's a wreck. There's holes in the walls, holes in the ceiling. There's a great family, kind family that lives there. But they can't physically do it all themselves financially. And the woman who lives there said to me, you know what, Brad? Do you know Cleveland, Ohio won't even give us a plaque to say that Superman was created here? Not even a plaque. And I said to her, I'm going to get you your plaque. And I said, and I'm going to be back. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I just started calling people in the entertainment industry and comics all over and just telling them the story. And when I would tell them the story, they'd all say the same thing: just tell me what you need me to do. I'm in, tell me what you need me to do. And I believe ordinary people change the world. I don't care where you went to school. I don't care how much money you make. That's nonsense. I believe in regular people, and that's how movements get started. And I believe in the greatness in all of us. And I believe in Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, two kids who were so poor, they used to draw on the back of wallpaper, and they gave us Superman. So we started this website called ordinarypeoplechangetheworld.com, And when you go to the site, you can bid on some of the great Superman art drawn by amazing artists. David Letterman's submitting something.
Oh, wow.
Stephen Colbert's submitting something. We have the TV show Heroes. You can actually bid in our auction for a walk-on part in the TV show Heroes if you want to be on it.
Wow.
It's a spectacular auction, and it's not about me.
Right.
It's about people in the entertainment industry saying this is wrong, and we need to make it right. Our goal is to basically raise $50,000 just to do the outside of the house. And the first week of the auction ended yesterday, and we raised $34,000 just in the first week. We have 3 more weeks to go. We have the best items to get to. And if you go to ordinarypeoplechangetheworld.com, you will see the movement that we are trying to start. And you know, I always thought that Superman was about, you know, the nerd who gets the girl, but it's not. It's about the greatness within us.
Absolutely.
That's what Clark Kent represents, and that's what, to me, the site is really about.
Well, I think it's absolutely fantastic. And folks at home, I didn't mention Brad's website yet, so if you say, hey, that's really something I want to contribute to, that's something I want to help out, go to his website, bradmeltzer.com. We've had it up throughout the show. If you weren't able to get the info, we'll of course have it up at our link at cult-pop.com, and we'll have all the information to either get you to his website or the foundation he's talking about to help that movement out. I was just touched when I read about that. I think that's fantastic. We've got a few minutes left, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the comics, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Some of the great work you've done. You've got a brand new collection. The Justice League, the Lightning Saga, is now out in a nice hardback edition, which is really nice. The Green Arrow, I just saw in a nice reissued edition. You've got a one-shot from DC, and I understand you're going to be doing some future work for some other companies. So just kind of bring us up to speed on all that's new in the comic world.
Yeah, no, listen, everyone knows I love the comic book side. I'm happy that the first collection of the Justice League work, The Tornado's Path, is actually coming out right now, also in paperback, so it's finally cheap and affordable. And there's obviously extras in the back where we did that kind of director's cut and commentary. And the new comic work I just did Last Will and Testament, but the next one is actually Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I'm going to work on that with Joss Whedon and do the comic book season 8 version that he's doing. Needless to say, all he had to do was ask. I'm honored to do it, and I come toward the end of the run, so that's always fun because that means you get to find out what's really going to happen.
Now I'm interested in that, where you obviously I think you get a lot of free reign in what you do because of who you are, but in something like that where you're kind of jumping into somebody else's universe, does that make you you're passionate about it, but do you feel restrictions, or do you feel like just a great joy in being able to be a part of the universe?
It's the same thing when you write Superman. There's nothing like putting words in Superman's mouth. I mean, that's a cool day of the job. You write Superman and you put words in Superman's mouth. And I love writing my novels. I love writing the Book of Lies, but there's nothing like doing that. And it's the same with Buffy to me. Here's a great character that we all know and we all love. And I'm thrilled to be there, and I'm at the same time a little bit terrified because it's so many people have knit beautiful pieces before. You don't want to mess up the quilt. But hopefully Josh won't kill me too much.
Well, that wraps up another Cult Pop, and this was a great show, wasn't it, folks? Sarah Langan, an incredible horror author. I really recommend you track her stuff down, and I think she's going to be one of your new favorite authors. Just really enjoyed her books. And of course, Brad Meltzer, he's a favorite of the show here, great guy. He's writing both incredible novels and doing great work in the comic book industry, and we recommend you track him down. We come to the end of the show like this. If you think, my goodness, I didn't get the information I need, simple thing to do. Go to our website, www.cult-pop.com. You can rewatch the entire episode or track down any of the authors or guests that you're interested in. And also check out the RSS feature. That enables you to be made aware of any time we come out with a new episode. You'll be contacted, and you can watch Cult Pop anytime you want. So thank you so much for visiting the site, and we thank you for watching Cult Pop.